This your girl, Sharon, aka the Melanin Nostalgic Runner. I know I keep saying nostalgia. I don't know. Address me by either. Anyway, welcome back to my channel. And today I wanted to do a story time. And the story time I want to do is based upon the rock and roll series. So in one of my videos, the travel vlog I had, there's one day where things did not go according to plan. And it was really bad to the point where I had a little bit of a rant. Well, there was more to the rant than what you probably saw. I cut that rant down by quite a bit, but I ranted for a minute and I had to chop and screw a lot of it out because I did not want everything to be out there for people to see. But when I was doing that rant, I kind of went into detail that, and this is the part I chopped out, a lot of the parts that I chopped out, why I was so upset about everything. So I kind of wanted to give you a little history on my experiences regarding the rock and roll series. It's not everyone's experience, it's just mine, my personal experience. So my very first rock and roll race was actually in 2015, January 2015. I did my very first rock and roll series in Arizona, Phoenix to be exact. And it started in Phoenix and ended in Tempe, which is like a college town where the University of Arizona is located, I believe, or Arizona State. I'll have to fact check that and I'll put that there. Anyway, neither here nor there. So it was a point-to-point race. And it was awesome. It actually was well organized. I was like, okay. So that was my first intro to the rock and roll series. And it was a full marathon. I did the full. And again, well organized. PF Chang's was their main sponsor at the time. I received, your normal racing shirt. And then also your medal. And then also one thing that was added that I still wear to this day, I actually wore it in one of my videos. I received like a windbreaker that on the back, like it has like the PF Chang sponsor there, and it says, then it has, the race name there. And then on the back, it says marathon finisher. And I still wear that to this day. So that was my introduction and taste into the rock and roll series. So after that, I was like, okay, I can do these again. And this is around the time where I just moved to Chicagoland. I didn't actually live in the city. I lived in the burbs at the time. And, pardon me, I found out that Chicago had a rock and roll series and has a rock and roll series at the time. So I was like, okay, I'll do that one. And the year that I decided to do it was actually a good year for it, because it was the year that Meb, and I'll post who he is and all that in this video. But Meb was in pause. So people, this is one of my cats. Her name is Whisper. She is a ham. See, this is her right here. Anyway, if you've watched any of my Get Fit with me series, you may have seen her a couple times, particularly the yoga series, because she just cannot help herself. She loves being part of the videos. Anyway, so back to the story. So basically, Meb, the same guy who won the Boston Marathon, the first American who's won it in forever, a year after the Boston bombing. He was going to be at this race. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do it. And then I found out rock and roll had this thing where you can do a 5K the day before. And Chicago only had a half. They didn't have a full. Not that Chicago needed a full because they have their own major full marathon. That's chef's kiss. we'll talk about that another time. But so I decided, okay, I'm going to do the 5K and now I'll do the half marathon the next day. And also by doing both of them, you actually get 3 medals. So you get one for the 5K, one for the half, and then a bonus medal for that. And then bonus medal for that. And then I also found out, because I did the Arizona full marathon the same year, I got another medal. So I decided, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. And so basically the 5K went well, went great, went according to plan, no big deal. Oh, this is a caveat about Chicago. The Rock and Roll Series in Chicago was in July, like late July. Those who are familiar with the Midwest, especially the Great Lakes area, Chicagoland especially, we don't start getting warm here until late July, early August. I know most people get warm in June and July. That's not what it is here. Here it's July and August. And so if it's a race that's longer than a 5K, it can get ridiculous, ridiculously hot. So remember that detail that I'm saying right there. And I keep moving my hair like crazy. So I did the 5K. I actually met someone, some random person who was a runner also, who I hung out with the whole entire weekend. And my boyfriend at the time came too, and it was like a good time. But anyway, so we did this 5K, and after I did the 5K, and Meb actually ran the 5K because this is before Meb even retired. He still was, Meb was still Meb at the time. He was basically doing like a U.S. tour of basically being like kind of, like an unofficial patriot, because he won the marathon a year after the Boston bombing of the marathon. So this is like his circuit tour that he had going on. And so I actually got to meet him. And when I tell you I was starstruck. Number one, it's weird because he kind of is, and I kind of already knew this. He's a little short because I'm tall. He's like 5'8", which probably isn't that short. That's actually average, but because I'm 6 foot, he's short to me. And the other random thing was, he kind of looks like a guy I used to date back in the day. Don't know why I need to throw that out there, but he just does. If he's watching this video, he knows that, because people say that about him. Anyway, because he's also a runner and literally same build and everything. Anyway, neither here nor there. So I'm like meeting him, and I'm like, he's like, your name, and I couldn't talk. Actually, first time ever starstruck. I've met other people before that are kind of known-ish, but like probably because he was like an inspiration to me, and like even before the Boston thing that he did, I like followed Meb before that. Like I kind of high-key was like, oh my gosh, Meb. So I had trouble talking. It was quite comical. I finally was able to muster up my name, and then we took a picture together. It was the cutest thing ever. And I'll post a picture here. You would never know in the picture that I like fumbled my words. Because normally I don't. That's not normally an issue for me. I'm kind of a talker, if you haven't noticed yet. But anyway, so this is like kind of my second mini experience regarding the Rock and Roll Series. I'm like, okay, so far so good. This is good. This is like business as usual, but actually kind of extra awesome because I just met one of like the runners who I've always wanted to meet. So yeah, I was happy. And we'll do another story time about elite runners another time, because he's not the only elite runner I've met, but he was like the one I've been wanting to meet forever. There's actually a couple others I want to meet. some track and field that are really, really known that everyone knows who they are. Like, I really want to meet Jackie Joyner-Kersee. But anyway, back to the main topic. So fast forward, next day, it's the half marathon. And again, the caveat, late July. And this race, I want to say, and I'll put the time in here later, what time it started. It started like, I will want to say, because of the fact that this race is at the time of year it is, it's still already too late of a start time. Because this is when it can get up to like the upper 80s and even 90s. And also, this is not a course along the lakefront. That's actually why, for those who come and visit or those who aren't as familiar, who run, that's why a lot of the races in the late summer, early fall are along the lakefront. One, for laziness, because it's easy just to do that, because the lakefront's a lakefront. But two, the lakefront, because of the water, it cools you down. The breeze from the Lake Michigan cools you down, so it's not as critical. And also, if worse comes to worse, if like the race doesn't have enough like aid stations, there's water fountains like everywhere on the lakefront. So you have ways of like being okay, basically, which is like, anyway, anywhere else that wouldn't be as easy of a thing. So anyway, because this race was like not really on the lakefront like that, it was briefly, but not really. It was horribly hot. And this was the first time where I ran a race and I was kind of worried because there wasn't enough aid stations. And then when you would get to the aid stations, unfortunately, this is at the time where I was still a little bit quicker of a runner. It wasn't as quick as I used to be, but I was still quicker. If you got to the aid stations later on, you were at risk of not having any water. And there was aid stations where there weren't any cups. Like, it was one of those. It was like a nightmare. And I think by this time, I don't know why I decided this, but I believe I was running. I think I was running actually with water on me because I was a little bit afraid of that. And I'm glad I did, because there was a lot of aid stations where they didn't even have people there, like manning the aid station. And it's just like, if you're going to have a half marathon and you don't have enough people to man the half marathon, then don't have the half marathon. Anyway, so this is not really a Chicago thing. This is a rock and roll thing. Okay, the reason why I'm saying this and why I know this is after I've done other races in Chicago, and including the Chicago Marathon. I've done the Chicago Marathon twice. And even with that, they only had 1 year where they had like a horrible blunder, and then they corrected, they course corrected right away and never had the issues ever again when it came to the water situation. But anyway, so I'm just like, how do you have this water situation when you are doing a half? That's kind of, you're endangering people. That's not even cool. And so that's why I knew it was the race versus the city or whatever. And also the other reason why I knew that is because I've done a lot of races already by then. So I still had an idea, and I used to be a race director. Another story time for that. But anyway, so I was like, okay, this is bad, really, really bad. So I had a mental note of this. I'm like, okay, I probably won't do this race again. But, well, at first I kind of did, okay. Let me time out. Let me take a step back. Because of the day before being so awesome, I believe, and I think I'm getting my details mixed up a little bit, because I think I actually did the Chicago Rock and Roll 3 times. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is just like, a one-off thing. because I know races there could be situations where a race will have a one-off situation where things just aren't together and you're like, okay, well, there we go. So I gave it grace. Fast forward to, I did a rock and roll and I'm trying to think what year it was. I'll have to put that down. I believe it was like 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. So I ended up doing a rock and roll half marathon in St. Louis. And that one was okay. It just wasn't great. And they didn't really have that many bands. And the funny thing is they didn't really have that many blues bands. But the caveat with that was it was raining like almost the whole entire time. So I don't know how they were going to be able to do that. But I don't know. Again, if you're a major race that has races across the country, I would think you would be able to, you should have the wherewithal to think ahead when it comes to these type of situations. Anyway, that wasn't the end of the world. So I was just kind of like, it wasn't what I expected it to be. I would think with the rock and roll series, there would be way more going on with it. And I don't know why I'm saying that, and I think I need to take a step back even more. The theme with the rock and roll series, let me go into the theme of it. With the rock and roll series, whether it's like a 5K, a 10K, a half, or full, there's supposed to be bands all throughout the course. So that essentially you don't need music and there's just bands. Me, I still have my own music anyway. Or there's some years when I was running faster, I didn't run with music at all and I was just gone. So I personally don't do the rock and roll for that reason. But I guess I do in a way, but not really. I do it for like because if the bands are on like all throughout the course, it basically essentially means there's more spectators. So for me, more spectators is better because especially if the races outside of that would be kind of monotonous or like no one would be there. It makes it where it's a little bit more fun and just isn't as boring essentially. But since a lot of these rock and roll races are like literally like in major cities, that's kind of really a non-issue in some ways. But anyway, so back to the St. Louis one. That was just okay. It wasn't great. And I don't know. It just was okay. And I kind of, at this point, this is after like at this point, my fourth rock and roll series race. I'm kind of thinking something's off about these races because St. Louis actually used to have a full marathon and they couldn't keep it. And for me, if you're such a major race that has races throughout the country, that kind of for me is a little bit of a red flag that you can't keep your races. Like what's happening where you can't keep the races? What ducks are not in the row where you can't keep this, especially if you're for profit. And I guess maybe that's the reason why it kind of even bothers me a little bit more. And then also, come to find out, I'm not exactly sure when I found this out, but I found this out a while back. The rock and roll series are also the same people who do the Ironman series. So this is like, you can literally facilitate a whole entire Ironman series, like triathlon Ironmans, which basically your whole entire city, if you have an Ironman, is kind of cut off it's shut down for a whole entire day because for Ironman, you're doing like, I forgot what the swim is, but you're doing a century bike ride and a marathon run. So you basically are cutting down your city for the whole entire day and you have them throughout the world, but you can't manage this rock and roll thing. I don't know. This is just all in my head as I'm just thinking about it because the more and more I do these races, the more I'm just kind of like, Anyway. And also, those who are not familiar with racing, races are not cheap. Like, they're expensive, especially if you do a lot of them. Now, don't get it twisted. There's plenty of races where if it is pricey, you're getting what you pay for. For example, the Chicago Marathon. I don't do it every year because it's really expensive, but you are getting what you pay for. It's one of the best well-organized races ever. It just is. And that's not just me being biased because I live here. It just really, really is. They spoil you. There's 8 stations, every mile marker, literally. So if you are dehydrated, that's on you. You just weren't listening to your body or going to the 8 stations and stuff like that. Anyway, so that's kind of what my thoughts are continuing this whole thing. So then I do the, fast forward, what I didn't know was going to be the last Chicago rock and roll half. I believe in 2018. It was 2018. The reason why I remember it was 2018 because it was right after I just moved here to the city proper. And I did it with one of my friends who lived in the burbs. I met up with them and we did it. And again, same experience. It just wasn't good. It was okay, but it wasn't great. And I think this time there just wasn't that many spectators either. And again, it's in July. It's just like, I don't know. It's just some of the things I was just thinking, why are they having this in July? Just things like that. But anyway, so I did it one last time. And then right then there, I was kind of like, okay, at this point, the jig is starting to be up when it comes to these rock and roll series. It's starting to be up. Fast forward to where the jig was up. Let me tell a story time within this story time to get you to paint the picture of why the jig was truly up and why I was ranting the way I was ranting, because this is going to be all full circle soon. Trust me. So this is now pandemic time, 2020. /2021. So those, the world shut down. That included races. Because this was before we knew it wasn't contagious if you're just outside. This is where we thought everything was contagious. That's when you were wiping everything down, all that. So anyway, there weren't any races in 2020. 2021 was the start of having races again. And one of the races that was readily available, and I always wanted to check out this city, but this is what the city had, was Savannah's rock and roll full marathon. See, I had to catch myself. I said half. Full. And at this point, I haven't done a full marathon that I paid for since 2019. And for those who don't know, the reason why I travel for all these races, I'm trying to do a half marathon and a full marathon in all 50 states. That's the mission. So that's why I've traveled throughout the country to do this. So that's why I was like, okay, Savannah, Georgia will be my full, and then I'll do something in Atlanta for the half. That was the original intention. Because I've heard beautiful things about Savannah. I've always wanted to check it out. And at this point, Savannah's race was in November. So that's around the time where Chicago's starting to get cold. So I was like, okay, cool. I can get away from the cold. Because one thing that I will do and will always love doing is getting out of the cold. Because yes, I thug out most of the winter in Chicago to enjoy the summer, because the summer here is the best. But to get away from the cold, oh yes, that I'll do. So anyway, I decided, I don't remember when I decided, but I think I decided back in it was early 2021. Because Atlanta, also too, Georgia did not really shut down. So they still were having races. So that was kind of the other selfish thing I was thinking about. I was like, well, they wouldn't be the ones that was shut down for COVID again, because they weren't really doing it the first time, right? So I was like, that's the one I'll pick. So that was the other reason why I picked that. So This is kind of like off the topic, but so after I decided that's the race I'm going to do, I actually had a night with some of my friends, some of my close friends, an old roommate, and like her and her friend or whatever. We all decided, I don't know why, it was one of those nights where like we all just drank way too much. I might tell that story time later on of how that all transpired. Probably not though, because it's more of other people's business and I'm not really trying to do that. But anyway, I got really too drunk. Like so drunk that I was hungover for 2 days. And for one, I didn't know that was possible. And for two, I know how it happened because this is my first time seeing all these people. And really, this is probably the most amount of people I was around since like 2019 or 2020 before the shutdown. So I think I thought I was like 19 and thought was in college and was drinking like I was in college, like an idiot. So it was so bad. I actually had like a half marathon like 2 days later that I ran it hungover. And I was still really hungover, but I ran it, I got it done. But that's when I decided then and there, okay, this fall in November, I'm going to take this full seriously. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm over this. Like, this is not, I'll go back, I'll have like a drink here and there, but there won't be getting drunk. So I did not get drunk for, I don't think I got drunk again until maybe 2022. I literally stopped drinking. Like, I was just over it. I wasn't going to drink anymore. And I didn't really. So, I'm taking it seriously. I'm really following this training plan. And also, too, just like everyone else, I gained some weight during the pandemic. I did not get as big as I did after what happened here, but I did gain some weight during the pandemic. So, but because I stopped drinking and I was taking this training seriously, I actually got back down to my pre-pandemic weight, which was the weight that I was in love with. Like, I worked really hard to get down to that weight. And so I was running probably the best I've been running in a minute. I was like, okay, this marathon's going to be the one. This is going to be the race that I get back. You know, because I've been chasing basically my own shadow for years and trying to get back to where I was before type thing. Not quite back to where I was before, because I don't know if I can get to that. Maybe. I'm just not trying to shut that all off, but I'm also trying to be realistic. Anyway, so we're going to this, so by we, at the time it was my ex, and now ex, my boyfriend at the time and I, we decided we're going to do Savannah, and what we did was Savannah for like 4 days, and then like the rest was Atlanta. Because at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to be staying in Chicago permanently. I was thinking about moving to Atlanta. Now, fast forward, I'm actually glad I didn't, but anyway. So, we're going to this race, and we're eating all this awesome Southern food. We actually we didn't even stay in Savannah because it is a little pricey to stay in Savannah. And again, as you probably have realized in my other videos, I like to travel on a budget because I want to be able to do a whole bunch of random stuff if I want. So we actually stayed in Hilton Head, because Hilton Head is only like an hour or so away from Savannah, Georgia. It's like right there. It's actually cheaper and actually just as nice. So the day before the race, we're doing all the touristy things, but like in a way that is fun. Like we're going to all these museums, looking at all the Spanish moss everywhere, just downtown at the square of Savannah. And in the middle of the day, this was like, I want to say Friday, it starts just raining, like pouring, like bad pouring. And also too, the temperature was kind of chilly for them. It was like 48 degrees, but then it dropped to like 40. And it was raining. This is like their winter weather, by the way, in November, which normally that doesn't come to like January, February. I was talking to like some of the locals who are like, this is not normal. But mind you, this was that year where the whole entire country had a cold front. So Chicago was like negative something. It was cold in Chicago. So down there, it felt fine because, we're conditioned. But anyway, so it's raining the day before. And in my head, I'm thinking, how is this going to affect the race? I hope it doesn't. And in my head, I'm like, I guess I'm going to be doing another full in the ring. Because I've done other full marathons in the ring the whole entire time. And trust me, it's not fun, but hey, the quest is the quest. So, yeah. I'm basically getting ready for this race. Next day, race morning, we're there. We found parking fairly quickly, even though my ex was giving me all the anxiety in the world over that for nothing, and it was getting on my nerves. But so we got there, and I get a race alert, and this is probably maybe an hour and a half before the race, because we're already there. We're at the race, waiting in the car, because it's still raining. It started raining the day before and never stopped raining. It's been raining the whole time. And we get an alert, full marathon canceled. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Why is this race canceled? And why did you wait until race morning to do that? Yeah, I was losing it. I was pissed. And then they made it where everyone who was doing the full are now doing the half. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing the half instead. And that was supposed to be a consolation prize. And at the time, that's all that I thought I was getting. And I was pissed. Now, mind you, there's some locals who are there who just like, oh, it's fine. Like, they're okay because they're not even happy because they're like this. A lot of people are at the race like this. And also, too, I mentioned I've ran races in worse conditions. And I'm not even kidding, I have. And so I was just really annoyed. And because I knew it was raining, and this is what bothers me. It's just like I looked at the radar and saw that it was going to rain the whole entire time. You guys, I'm pretty sure you guys did the same thing. And if you didn't, you should have let everyone know that there was a possibility this was going to get canceled. Because frankly, I did not like the idea that I got dropped down to doing a half. I still would have rather have done my half in Atlanta. I didn't really want to do it there. So I was really just doubly irritated. And for those who are just like, you would have done the full? I'm like, yes, because I had a poncho on. That's another thing. I was able to plan ahead to realize, okay, wear what you need to wear to make it work. And for me, because I had a poncho on, I was dry like the whole entire time of the race, even though I was out there and it was raining the whole entire time. But because I had a poncho on and thought ahead, I wasn't cold. I was Gucci. I was A-okay because I planned ahead. I'm just kind of like, so I'm just upset that this is happening. I'm like, I don't understand this. Why would you just do that? I'm just like, okay, are you kidding me? And I guess what I was trying to say is I was able to plan ahead. I'm sure the race could have done the same thing. Instead of telling everyone on race morning, like less than an hour or so before the race starts, that the race is canceled, like the full is canceled. And what was extra annoying is just like, for me, in my head, I'm thinking, if you're going to cancel the full, cancel the half. Just throw the whole thing away. Like, so right then and there, that's telling me you didn't cancel this because of the conditions. Well, you did, but like, and that's another thing too. There's really no explanation of why it got canceled. So now you're just leaving it to guess. And so only thing I could think of kind of somewhat logically is that this would have like been horrible for the volunteers because the volunteers not planned for it to be raining. And for them, it literally is winter time for them. So that is cold for them. That's like us standing outside in 14-degree weather if you're someone who's from up north for hours. Because, you know, people finishing a pool, that could take 6 to 8 hours sometimes for some people, you know, depending on when the cutoff is. I'm not sure when the cutoff is for the race. But anyway. Also, so I'm annoyed, and now I'm at the start, waiting for the race to start in our corral. Because they made us go in these corrals so early. But it's pouring down rain, and they had the wherewithal to cancel the race, the full, but not the wherewithal to accommodate the people who were doing the race and just had us just sitting there. Because they're still doing the start. Like, and it wasn't like they were only letting like a handful of people in, like this little, like, instead of like using the whole road, they were using like this little thing here and just letting a little bit of people in at a time and doing like a staggered start, which, yes, that made sense before we knew that this is not as contagious outside as what we thought. And also, it would also make more sense if this is for it to be outside where it's less transmittable on top of it. Yeah, I was looking for a minute because I'm just like, make it make sense. So, yeah, about time the race starts, we're all cold. Now I'm cold because I was standing out here and you made me stand in this corral instead of just like doing a normal start. Like, if you're going to make changes to your event at the last minute, make changes to all of it. Like, all of us basically who were waiting were just all upset. No one was happy. Everyone was just pissed because it was just such a bad organized thing. It was not good. But okay, once the race started, it was actually okay overall because the volunteers and the spectators made it worth it. And that's usually the case for most races. But the thing is, it's still this company, rock and roll, dropping the ball yet again. So a couple days later, fast forward, and by the way, my morale is shot now. Now I'm just like, the rest of the trip was basically ruined, in my opinion. And because those who are not runners or distant runners may not understand this, but I put 18 weeks of my life on hold. When I mean my life, I mean like I stopped drinking, I was training, I didn't do things all for the sake of a race that didn't happen. I put my body through like training, 18 weeks of training for nothing. It's kind of like equivalent to like blue balls. That's the best way to describe it, blue balls. And I probably would have been less upset if it was related to Oh Girl. I would have been way less upset if it was related to Oh Girl. But because it was related to just some weird, I don't even know the real answer. I don't know if it was the city's call, but like if it's the city's call, it's your responsibility as a, race to communicate that to your customers, basically. There's been plenty of times where a city says no go. And yeah, I'm going to be upset about it, but I understand. That's nothing you can control. And if that was a reason, fine. But like, you never gave a real reason. You just said it was canceled, but you didn't cancel it all the way. You kind of canceled it. It's like, so anyway, that event actually spiraled me into my depression. I was depressed from that day all the way to like mid-2022. I gained the weight that most people gained during the lockdown then. that's when I gained the weight, because I lost all motivation. That put such a horrible taste in my mouth. It was very demoralizing, because those who are not familiar with doing distances or more than a half, that's no longer a physical challenge anymore. It's here. It's basically playing chess versus checkers. Now it's a mental race. And so it literally kind of mentally messed me up, because I was going to get the release and I never got that release. So I think it was a couple weeks later, I'm not exactly sure, they send a thing saying, hey, our bad, kind of thing. And they're like, so in order to make up for this, you can either do this race for free in 2022 at Savannah, or you can do a handful of these other races. And these other races, 2 of them are like in Texas, 1 of them I already did. I think 1 of them was in Arizona, 1 was in San Diego, and there was a whole bunch of, and the thing is, all these other ones were pretty much all halves. They're all either halves, or the one that was a full was in Texas. I've already done a full marathon in Texas, so I'm not gonna do it again. And it was somewhere I didn't even want to go. It was like San Jose or something weird. Or no, it wasn't San Jose. I'm sorry, San Antonio. It was San Antonio. So I just was like, I don't really want to go to San Antonio. But anyway, so right then there, I was like, okay, I'll just do Savannah again. This time I could stay in the city longer, this, that, and this, and that. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I'm thinking, okay, rock and roll, they're going to right their wrong. We're cool. It's good. Well, apparently the city of Savannah has had enough of rock and roll shenanigans and would not give them their permit. So I agreed to do this back in I want to say later November. So a couple weeks after the race, in 2021. And then in April of 2022, I find out there's no more rock and roll race in Savannah. It's done. They're done with them. They don't want any parts of them. And same thing with, this has already happened before with Chicago and quite a few other locations. And maybe there's a reason for that. Right? So, okay. So I'm annoyed again, because now I don't really have any more options now. So the only option is now I do have to do a half. Or else I'm just going to eat it. And I'm like, no, I need to be compensated for my troubles, because that was some BS. I need to be compensated accordingly, right? So the only option that made sense was the Vegas half. So I decided, okay, I'll do the Vegas half. This will be, sorry, I keep looking at my mic because I can't tell when I might end up buying another mic. Time out on the story. I think I'm going to end up buying another mic, because the mics that I'm using right now, I can't tell when the mic goes out. So all of a sudden you'll hear me, and then all of a sudden it's like, so that's why I keep looking, because I can't tell other than this little light. You can see it barely, right? Yeah. I can't tell otherwise if the mic's not on. Anyway, back to the story. So I'm like, okay, I'll do Vegas. Fine. And it'll be excuse to be out west. And also too, I wanted to do a race where it's the winter months, because excuse to leave when it's cold, fine. So fast forward to the trip, right? So you already got my rant on the 5K and why I was annoyed. And now you understand why I was really annoyed. Because this is not my first time dealing with this company. I've given this company multiple chances and thinking, oh, okay, all the grace. Like, Maybe it's the city. Maybe it's, the weather. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. And I already, before this race even happened, I already had it in my mind this was going to be my last rock and roll race anyway. And you probably couldn't tell with the rant because I said it, but like I already had it in my head because I've just had so many like less than stellar reviews for this race or the series, if you will. Because for you being a for-profit race and you being owned by an Ironman company, do better. The world majors don't have these problems. But maybe because they're not doing a race like all throughout the country, spreading themselves thin just to try to get a quick buck. Maybe that's why. But it's just telling that like, I wish I would have taken pictures from like 2014 of their website to now. They had so many more races back then. But one by one, these cities just get sick of these people because they don't do a good job. And also it's for profit. So it seems like the money must not be going back to the city. And it's more of a trouble than like a help. And Savannah especially understood why they were just fed up because Savannah's like, we're a touristy city. We don't need you to bring more people in. We bring people in because we're Savannah. Same thing with Chicago. We don't need you for tourism. We got this covered. We're freaking Chicago, So I'm pretty sure that's why one by one these, cities are getting just fed up with it. I will say this though, the Vegas half marathon, even that had some hiccups too, a little bit, and maybe this is why now you're going to start to understand. I allow way too much grace. I'm too forgiving of a person, clearly. Corporations that don't deserve it. Somehow I'm just like forgiving in a way. I don't know. Or maybe I'm devil's advocate. Pick a side. It's one of those. But like even with the rock and roll race in Vegas, which I do, I will review. I'm going to put this in the middle and then review that. The thing that I did not love about that was they had this balloon that they made. They had like this arch thing that they made people go through to start the race. Well, not even start the race, to get to the start line. Instead of doing a corral start like most other races do, they decided to do this weird thing instead, where you went through this arch, and then from the arch, then you would end up going towards like where the start was at. And then even the start was kind of funky too. People were falling on the start, by the way. A lot of people just face plant at the start. Because they had this arch and the directions weren't clear when it came to like this arch being an arch, I'm like at this, and I was in basically like the third group. The elites, the blues, and then the green. I was green. So like we were supposed to be the next group. It was supposed to be fairly quickly, but like it took forever for us to get through because you couldn't tell because it was single file. They had this arch that's this big, but then they made it where it was a single file line. And then there's people all throughout the side here that aren't even part of the race because another thing is they allow the spectators to be just waiting, hanging out. And it's just like, what kind of weird... So basically leading up to the race, even though it was a fun time and there was DJs and stuff, I'm bumping into people who don't know how races work because they're spectators. And some of them, I don't even know if they were spectators. I'm kind of high-key, a little confused how some of these people even got in this place. Because I don't think they had anything to do with the race and they were just there, just like hanging out. And I'm just like, dude, you have security here that are checking that, by the way, didn't even check a bag. They're saying there's a sign saying security checking a bag, but they ain't check a single bag. I could have probably brought something there if I wanted to. Someone else probably could have too. It was nuts. I'm just like, this is not safe. I'm just like, so, and also too, with the single file situation, that also wasn't safe either, because I saw people pushing people through. No one was pushing me through, by the way, because I don't know. I think I had an aura on me that day, like I'm not the one or the two. The look on my face was just a look on my face. Like, I was there to have a good time, but I also wasn't there for play either. I was there for a reason, right? So yeah, so like, they had the single file thing, and then once we got through there, then we find out it's another, like, I want to say like tenth of a mile to get to even the start corral, but there's no corral because they did this single file thing, so there wouldn't be a corral. And then when you run through to the start, this is how people face plant, by the way. They have all these little gates here, like what you would have at a concert. You know, like when you're waiting in line at a concert, like these metal gates. They had like, I would say like 3 or 4 of them. And because the gates are the way they are, on the ground, they weren't on the ground really. Like they were poking up and stuff. So people were tripping on that running through the start. And the other reason why they were tripping is because the Blue Man Group is right there. So you're kind of distracted. You're just like, oh my gosh, it's the Blue Man Group. Me, I wasn't as distracted because I've seen them before. And I've actually almost went on stage before. So I was kind of not really impressed. I'm like, okay, hey, hi guys. And just kept going. And also, I saw that. I was like, this looks like a hazard. And also, I'm mindful that like I already did some klutzy type situation before. I don't want to do klutzy and not get through this race. But like, also, another thing to start, I've never seen so many people fall during a race ever. And someone else face planted at like mile 5, 6-ish. I want to say it was 5.5, 6. And I was really annoyed by that, but I didn't stop because I had to keep going. But I did yell and say medic, 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 because I saw them from forever. I saw them like almost like, I want to say a quarter of a mile away that they fell. And there's also other people there already helping them, but racers helping them. Not a single medic nearby. And at this point, this is night. It's dark outside now. And I'm just like, child, how you gonna have a night race, but you don't have medics nearby? And then the start's right, the finish is right over on the other side because they had it where the gates were separating it. So you saw the people going to the finish as you keep going. And then the 10K split was it was happening relatively shortly. So the 10K people could finish up and then the half kept going, that way. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you not have people all throughout the course at a night race in Vegas? I didn't see anyone go to them. And I was looking rear view wise for a minute trying to see, did anyone ever get to them? Because I started running backwards to see if anyone got to them. Other than other spectators waiting for someone to help them. And if this was the Chicago Marathon, that would never be a problem. Someone would get to them right away and get them off the course at least. But it's just kind of and the differences with that is Chicago and a lot of the races I'm describing to you are all during the day. So the fact that you're not even taking extra precaution for a night race, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So as much as I enjoyed the race for what it was, there's just too many things that just are against this company that I will never do another one of their races. That's basically the conclusion of this video. Is just that, I mean, if you like them, I love it. If you like it, I love it. But respectfully, I don't need to put any more money in their pockets. And in this case, I didn't even put any money in their pockets because this was a race, a free entry for their multiple mess ups. So anyway, that's the reason why my rant was the rant. I promise you I'm not an angry person. It's just, I don't like when I feel like people are trying me. Or things are trying me for no reason. And also, as you can clearly tell, I'm not a fan of things that doesn't logically make sense. Like, it's just like, and maybe I'm a little extra critical of these things because I did allude and state earlier, I used to be a race director. So these things, I mean, for me, the most I ever did was a 5K race that I organized. I would never organize anything more than that because I would not want, in my conscience, someone to not be around if someone gets hurt. And let me tell you how type A I am. When I had my own race, I actually had my bike, had my first aid kit on the bike, and I was riding throughout the course. And then I had other people throughout the course managing things too. And then we had like walkie-talkies, you know, because I was just freaked out at the idea. And I actually had the ambulance, like EMTs there too. I was just freaked out at the idea that someone getting hurt at my race. And it was only 5K. And a lot of the people who did my races were walkers. They weren't even runners. But it was a lot older people who were doing it. So either way, that's kind of my little rant, I guess continued rant, but not really a rant, more or less a story time of why my relationship with rock and roll is over with. I'll wear their shirts still because they're cute and cool, but we ain't together. We're broken up and we're never getting back together. I don't see us getting back together anytime soon. Yeah, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and don't forget to subscribe and like the video and tell all your friends about this. Bye.